Climate change, renewable energy, green transition, these questions are hugely important for our society. At some fundamental level, they speak to the future viability of humanity on this planet, but they also raise a number of related problems of social justice, of fairness, of how we best adjust our societies to these changes. And these are questions that the social sciences and humanities are particularly well placed to address.
We've known for a long time that greenhouse gas emissions from human activity warm the planet. Since 1990, which is when the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change started producing reports, we've seen that global emissions have increased by about 75%. We have made progress in the sense that the rate of increase of emissions has come down somewhat, but we're already seeing the impacts of climate change. We're seeing increased frequency and intensity of weather-related events. We're seeing droughts, we're seeing floods, etc. The other thing we've learned over the past 20 years or so of governments around the world trying to put in place policies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, mainly from the power sector and the transport sector, is that it's quite easy to put in place policies that have unintended consequences or that have a disproportionate effect on, again, vulnerable groups of people. So for researchers in the social sciences, it becomes really important to try to understand both what determines society's response to climate change in terms of mitigation and adaptation, but also to make sure that we put people at the center of efforts to address it. In my own research on climate, energy, and environmental policy, I try to understand, first of all, what we can learn from the past 30 years of national level experimentation in terms of fiscal incentives and regulations to accelerate the development and diffusion of low carbon technologies. A second part of my research is really trying to understand how to inform decisions by the public sector, by the civil society, and by firms in the face of the huge uncertainty regarding technologies, policies, and markets.
Here in Cambridge, I lead a program called Democratizing Education for Global Sustainability and Justice. Our work is especially to address a very significant capacity chasm. We face global sustainability challenges, but we don't have the training in law and policy innovation and leadership to be able to actually comply with our international treaty obligations and our domestic regulatory obligations to solve those problems. And so in Cambridge, our program, which is based at Lucy Cavendish and Hughes Hall in the University of Cambridge and involves several faculties, is providing online education for current and future law and policy leaders, especially in highly climate vulnerable countries.
Well, I'm a contemporary archaeologist, and I explore patterns of material and landscape change over the last few hundred years. And one of the key issues we've been grappling with is biodiversity loss. So I work with farmers in Kenya to map how they manage their landscapes and their resources under conditions of climate change. One of the things we've been particularly interested in is mapping crop biodiversity, particularly indigenous and land races. And over the last year, I've been working to set up a stakeholder network within IPES, which is the biodiversity equivalent of the IPCC, to get crop biodiversity built into a global biodiversity and conservation policy. It probably seems really odd to hear an archaeologist talking about contemporary biodiversity, but as both a science and a humanity, archaeology is really well placed to trace how different things from near and far, old and new, play into the contemporary challenges that we face today.
My own area of research focuses on how civil society actors like non-governmental organizations are advocating for more ambitious, more progressive climate policies. And I'm particularly interested in how civil society or really climate activist groups are changing the strategies that they're using to try to promote climate action. So previously, most groups focused, broadly speaking, on educating publics and policymakers, changing hearts and minds, so to speak, raising awareness about environmental problems. But in the last decades or more, we've seen a swing towards more hard-nosed strategies of civil disobedience, civil resistance, and also increasing climate litigation. Currently, I have a collaborative project where I'm working with a group of other political scientists and climate lawyers to better understand the effects of climate litigation. By effects, we don't just mean narrow outcomes of particular court cases, but also the effects on the societies and the groups of stakeholders on behalf of which these court cases are brought. So I think our disciplines, social sciences and humanities, bring unique perspectives to the study of climate change. In addition to focusing on solutions, we also focus on social and political conflict arising from climate change, including backlash and including growing climate skepticism, which we are seeing at the moment. This is hugely societally important because to address the climate crisis, we not only need practical solutions, we also need to ensure that the solutions we do enact do not end up deepening social and political conflict. So I guess my main point here is that climate change and environmental sustainability is not just a scientific and an engineering problem, it is also very much a social and political problem.